Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And this time, I have friends, plural this time, and I think this is the first time I've had multiple people. Actually, no, this is back-to-back weeks. I just had two people on last week for the Aviator. Not quite as big as my party for Eyes Wide Shut, and nobody is drinking tonight, at least that I can tell so far. But
this is vodka.
There we go. Robert's partying. But speaking of the people joining me this week, we have Heath and Robert. So as always, I'm going to let both of them shamelessly plug whatever they would like to shamelessly plug. Heath, what would you like to shamelessly plug for all the wonderful audience out there watching this video?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at Letterboxd. That's the #1 place to find me. At the One Heath Bar. I'm on there all the time. I probably watch 10 to 15 movies a week on average. I write a review for everything I write. Yeah, find me there. Also at SiftPop.com and Shortbox.com. You can find stuff.
And if you want to get a good laugh, more than you got during the movie, go look at Heath's review of Moonfall.
I knew you were going to mention that.
I had so much fun talking about that with Aaron for the podcast because, God, what a movie.
Every once in a while, I have to tear into a movie, and so far in the fresh year of 2022, Moonfall has been my main primary victim. And if you want to read my extensive review, tearing that to shreds, have fun.
I think the only thing more harsh on Moonfall was the box office.
Yep.
Awkward. But Robert.
Yeah, I just want to start out by saying I'm the guest on your podcast. You must be the other guy. No, yeah, you could find me on YouTube. Apart from this video, you can find me at Robert's Thoughts, my channel, and you could find me on Twitter _Rob's Thoughts, and then of course all over SiftPop.
Awesome. And yes, we're here to talk about The Padded today. And I can promise you now, none of us are cops.
I'm not a cop.
Not a cop.
So will you get drunk quicker from a drinking game about cops or microprocesses?
Probably cops.
Yeah, definitely.
Except you have to drink a whole drink every time they say microprocessor.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, that could be the game in and of itself. Just a shot for cops and finish the drink for microprocessors, and you're done. You don't even need to involve drugs or murder. Just nope, that's enough right there.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd be able to murder anybody by the time you're done that game, because I think you might be dead of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
But there you go. But yes, so for those who haven't checked out this show before, there's 3 segments to the show. We talk about coming attractions for this week, which is February 18th, 2022, because my God, we're almost 2 months into 2022 already. And then we'll be talking about our feature, The Departed, and some recommendations for all you lovely folks out there. So starting things off with coming attractions this week, it's an interesting week. So Heath, what movie are you most excited or obligatory, kind of picked, just this is what you're excited about?
If I'm being completely honest, I'm not excited about virtually anything. I don't care about the remake of remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Dog looks like the most insufferable movie to me. I guess by default, by the most shiny turd out there, I would give it to Uncharted, but I don't think Uncharted's going to be good. I have not thought that even since I saw the first trailer. I thought it just looked completely out of proportion from what would actually make a good action adventure film. And that's not even to count what they did in terms of adapting it from the video games and how it's miscast. It just doesn't look appealing. But of the available options, I guess I'll say Uncharted.
What a lovely sell.
I know. I'm really giving it my all, but I'm unfortunately as most people know, this is kind of the lull in the calendar for most big movies. Mid to late January through about beginning of March, you're going to have this where people are dropping films that the studios don't have confidence in, where there's already been screenings and these films are getting panned. This happens every year. We know that it's coming. We wait, we suffer through it until we get to the Batman. That's what we do.
Batman. So Robert, are you excited for Uncharted?
No, I probably won't even see it. Like
There you
most of the
go.
stuff that's come out this year, I think I've only have like 5 or 6 logged this year for 2022. So yeah, Uncharted. Dog, maybe that one does seem good enough to me. Like I like a good comfort movie, and that's kind of what it seems like as long as a friggin' dog doesn't die. But fortunately, the worst person in the world is coming out near me finally. So I'm looking forward to finally checking that out. There's always a couple of those movies every year. They're like, I hear about them for years or for months and months after they premiere at a festival somewhere, or especially if they're an international film. It's like, well, I guess I'll just friggin' twiddle my thumbs until this comes out somewhere near me. So it's been long enough, and I can finally go see this movie. Barely know anything about it, and that's intentional. So yeah, I'm excited.
So to speak upon some of these things, so first Uncharted, I think the only time I laughed in the trailer was when that guy is obnoxiously Scottish and just the reaction Tom Holland had, because I could actually believe that was his real reaction and they just caught it on camera. And I wish so. I'm not even going to be excited when they do that whole entire falling out of the plane thing come the movie. I've seen that goddamn set piece so many times watching trailers, and I really wish they didn't give away the other one that they just did in the new trailers, because that actually looks pretty cool. Not gonna lie. I'm just like, does Tom Holland have to be in every movie?
Well, it's all the just crap besides Marvel, right? It's just like the stuff that he thought might be good, and then it just looks like it's actually not.
It's like
I think he needs
Walking.
new agents. Yeah.
It's
Cherry, which was probably just a favor for the Russos, but
and Mark Wahlberg works in certain Mark Wahlberg things, which we're going to talk about. A movie that he actually works very well in. I don't know if he's worked very well in Uncharted. Supposedly, he was supposed to be Nathan Drake about 12 years ago. When
Nathan Fillion was supposed to be Nathan Drake, and that would have worked.
What I saw, David O. Russell was going to make an Uncharted movie.
Yeah.
And
well, they went
Wahlberg
through like 4 or 5 directors to get to this point. So I mean, it's the movie's been in development hell since about 2009. I mean, it's a joke.
Well, they just announced a BioShock movie coming to Netflix, so
I know, and it's not going to be good. I'm so sad. I'm
just going to chill here, enjoying my enjoyable video game franchise of the Sonic movies, because at least they know how silly they are, and Jim Carrey. So there you go. And worst person in the world, this is definitely that time where you weed through the endless trash and just wait for international films to trickle in before the Oscars.
Yeah.
So like February was like the same time like Portrait of Lady on Fire came out a couple years ago.
It's true, yeah.
I know like Drive My Car's coming to HBO Max. So it's just like, hey, Oscar movies. Bam. So check them out. My most anticipated actually was, and I'm going to preface this, I've seen almost every single movie releasing this weekend out of like the 10 that they have on first showing, except for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Uncharted. So I did see Dog, and somehow that has a 89% on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Which well, probably all like 6 out of 10s.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just
honestly
misunderstand sometimes how Rotten Tomatoes works, and it's just a review aggregate of did people like it or not like it, is it good or bad, no variance in that, and not even like good or bad, like is it okay or like meh, like so I'm not shocked that, as Robert said, like it's a feel-good movie. I would imagine that even a off-putting feel-good movie will have enough feel-good moments that you'd be like, yeah, that was fine, it was serviceable.
Right.
The movie's legitimately weirder than you probably think it is. Like,
it has me interested.
I'm just like, there's a weird shit in this movie.
Honestly, the trailer kind of gave that away, and that's why I was like, this looks like it could go really bad when he pretends to be blind, and they put that in the trailer, and I'm like, this seems not okay. Like in 2022, like,
and like that wasn't even the weird part.
It felt odd to me, and I was just like, if they're putting this stuff in the trailer, I have no idea what's in the movie, but it's probably not much better.
But so when I put my notes together for today, this is about a week ago before I saw all of these movies. The movie I was most excited for this weekend was actually The Cursed. And it's because I saw the trailer for that and I'm like, I have no idea what this is about. And it looks creepy. So,
was it good?
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Okay.
I don't feel like I should give away what it's really about because you definitely can't tell from the trailer.
No, you can't.
So,
I'll even revise my thing. I completely forgot that The Cursed was getting a limited release this weekend. I will revise from Uncharted to The Cursed because I think that does actually look interesting, or at least the trailer made it out to be interesting. The trailer gave away nothing, which kudos to you, Hollywood. At least you got that one right. You surely didn't get the Uncharted trailer right. That trailer is awful. But the trailer for The Cursed is genuinely intriguing. It has a great ambiance and atmosphere to it. And I was like, this looks interesting. I want to see this, even though I have no idea what it's about.
All I'm going to say is it's like a twist on one particular like old school horror creature feature. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. Robert probably saw my review of it. So
I don't think I read it yet. I think it's still sitting in there, but I'll check it out soon.
I don't blame you because I think I've dumped like 12 this week.
I got through most of them.
I know they've been trickling through. So
yeah,
you look at SiftPop's website right now, it's like 80%.
It's the Shane
Conto, staff writer. It's like
so, but yes, so we don't have to sift through endless trash anymore because now it's time to talk about The Departed. So I'm going to ask two questions to start off this time because usually my question is, what about this particular film made you want to come on to this episode? So Heath, why did you want to come on and talk about The Departed?
Sure. So for me, a lot of it had to do with my burgeoning interest in film itself. When The Departed came out, I was already a fan of movies. My family and I, we had regularly watched the Oscars together. It was a big thing. It's still kind of like a mini holiday with my family. We get together, we make our picks. And I started around the mid 2000s actually trying to watch the movies, not just, casually seeing something like Titanic only, and that's it. Like actually trying to educate myself so I could have a decent guess at some of the picks. This was before they really had like an industry just based around Oscar speculation, and you could just Google, who are the favorites. So The Departed is actually the very first ever Martin Scorsese film I ever saw. Just due to how my film history went, that was the first one in line. That was the first one I got to see, and I have been a big Scorsese fan ever since, and this is a big reason why. I consider this film a masterpiece. I absolutely love it, and it will always have a special place in my heart because it was really one of the first films, not only the first Scorsese film I ever saw, but just one of the first films in period that what I would consider elevated filmmaking, something beyond just average blockbuster fare that I really wanted to dive into in my burgeoning interest of film and cinema as an industry and more so as an art form. So that's my association and love for The Departed.
Awesome. So obviously The Departed has a deep-seated place there for you, Heath.
Yep.
How about you, Robert? Why did you want to come on and talk about The Departed?
Yeah, so I was thinking about like the first time I saw The Departed, and it turns out that my story is somewhat similar to Heath's, but
Nice.
take it like 8 years later. And so I kind of grew up also only watching blockbusters and not watching, serious movies, mostly just because of, parental restrictions, that sort of thing. But then one night I was house sitting for someone who had like an expansive DVD collection, and I saw The Departed sitting there, and I saw the cast, and I was like, I recognize a lot of these names, and I put it in, and I was like, holy crap, this is what movies can be. Like, it's more than just action movies. That was the majority of what I saw: action and kids and comedies, that sort of thing. It just kind of blew my mind, and it still blows my mind every time I've seen it since. Like, I've seen it probably a dozen times, and I still love it to this day.
Awesome. So both of you kind of answered my second question, which was like, how did you come upon The Departed? And because I wanted to ask that question to give me an excuse to tell my story of the first time I watched this movie. So
Shane, how did you come across The Departed?
it's funny you should ask. So I remember, I guess the first Scorsese film that I saw was probably Raging Bull and Taxi Driver in a cinema class in high school. And I did not like Raging Bull, like at all as a 16-year-old. I'm like, all they did was yell and curse at each other the whole time. So, and this was also someone who regularly watched Delta Farce and Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Mhm.
So just putting that out there.
I've got Mall Cop on my shelf. It's a good movie.
A steward of cinema.
As a fat kid growing up, that movie struck a chord with me, to be perfectly honest. Delta Farce, not so much. I watched a lot of blue collar comedy. But the thing is, when I got to college, I found this magical place called the Princeton Record Exchange in Princeton, New Jersey, which Princeton just happens to be like 10 minutes down the street from Ryder. So, and it's the largest record store on the East Coast. And they sell tons and tons of used movies that are $5 or less. And I remember in one of my binges, I bought The Departed. I'm like, this looks cool. And I remember sitting in my dorm room. And now this is the part where it's like, yes, we spoil these movies when we talk about them on here. So, warning, because I'm going right to the end. Because I'm sitting there in my dorm room. I had my door open and I was so mad. So, like, first off, the second that elevator opened,
Mm-hmm.
and then bam, Leo's dead. It's just like,
His mind wasn't the only one who was blown.
nope. Everybody else watching that movie. And like, what was funny was a couple weeks before this was my first ever film club meeting, and we watched Burn After Reading.
Oh.
It's like Brad Pitt, bam.
And rid of all the handsome Hollywood guys.
It's like, what are these poor actors shot out of nowhere? But the thing is, like, I was so mad, and I'm sitting there thinking, Matt Damon is going to get away with this. I'm so pissed. And at this point, like, my perspective on movies was pretty black and white. I'm like, Matt Damon's a bad guy. He's going to get away with this. And then all of a sudden, you just see those little booties and a tracksuit, and it's Mark Wahlberg standing there. I'm just like, I legitimately screamed and cheered in my dorm room. I think that was one of the most visceral reactions I've ever had to a movie outside of a movie theater. And just sitting there in my dorm room, I was so happy Matt Damon got shot at the end of The Departed.
I will say, for people who have not seen The Departed or Infernal Affairs, which it's based off of, and don't know the ending, this is one of my most favorite movies to recommend watching with a friend. And like, not like, oh, here's my copy, go watch it. Like, no, I want to watch it with you because I want to see that. Like, and everyone has that react. Like, it is fun because when Leo dies, you're just F this, no, screw this, and you get viscerally upset. And then when Matt takes it, 5 minutes later, 8 minutes later, you're like, yes, and you're pumping for joy. It is so fun. It's great.
So, like, spoiler, almost everyone dies.
Yeah.
Turns into one of those kinds of movies. But interesting thing with this, so obviously, talking about Scorsese films since September, I'm almost at the end, mid-April. And the funny thing is, this is the next one. So Rolling Stones Shine a Light. Speaking of the Rolling Stones, so this is definitely one of those movies why everybody makes jokes that the Rolling Stones give me shelters in every Scorsese movie. Because between that and Up to Boston, that Dropkick Murphys became such a huge thing because of this movie, and also Jonathan Papelbon.
Yeah, there's the number one reason.
And it just, obviously, like, the music and everything, but I feel like, obviously, because this was the movie that Scorsese finally got, like, his best director and this one best picture. And I feel like, in retrospect, people are just like, this this was just like wasn't one of his best ones, and they just gave it to him this time. I'm like, who are you kidding? Because like I know this isn't like as like dark and as like the protagonists aren't as dark and just unnerving as like say Jake LaMotta or especially Travis Bickle, but there's something about this film that works on so many levels, and it still has complexities. It has gray areas because it's like it's interesting because my original reaction watching this film and then watching it again, especially this past weekend, of like feeling some like kind of feel bad for Matt Damon. And I feel like that's definitely a perspective I did not have when I was 19 years old when I watched this the first time, and a big difference when you're 30. But I guess
I definitely don't have that perspective.
there's just like this tiny bit of like, I think that confrontation with him and Jack Nicholson, where it's just like this kid basically dedicated his whole entire life to this guy, and he wasn't truthful with him, and he was deceiving him, and the fact that he turns out to be like an FBI informant the whole entire time, it's just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And this movie made me have less faith in the U.S. law enforcement. Because it's just like all of this just like, yeah, everybody can be an informant and just keep doing shit and stuff like that. Obviously it's a movie, but like still. But I guess for both of you, what are some of the things that stuck out to both of you that you love most about this film?
Well,
Robert, if you want to go first.
Do you like
Oh, Basson?
Yeah, I know. And if you can see, I got the Boston stuff up there. That's always the number one thing that I love about it, just like the Boston stuff. But I think the main stuff is the like the intrigue, like you were talking about. I was thinking back, I don't know if I've ever been as tense watching a movie by myself as I was in like the scene following the adult theater when Leo is following Matt Damon. It's like, holy crap, he might actually get him right here. But there's also still an hour 15 minutes left in the movie, and it's like, what the heck is going to happen here?
Well, it's not even just that he might get him. I always felt that had some of the greatest sense of tension, where it's like,
yeah,
anyone could die. They could both die right now, which obviously, if you look at the runtime, like you said, that can't happen. But simultaneously, you don't know. It felt like they could die.
It felt like an anything can happen type of movie,
Yep.
and it still feels like that. And yeah, like I said, this is whatever 10th, 12th time I've seen it. I actually watched it an hour ago. It's still as gripping and as intense and as convoluted and like makes you want to pay attention, as rewatchable as ever. And one thing that I noticed in relation to Scorsese's other movies, like a big thing that people talk about a lot is, you know, he glorifies his protagonists who do the bad stuff. Like, I don't think Matt Damon is ever glorified, and he or Nicholson, like this is nowhere near Ray Liotta and Goodfellas, or Wolf of Wall Street. It's like, even though Ray Liotta ends up in prison, you know, you still are like, for a little bit, you're like, this looks kind of fun, but like this, you're like,
I never garlic.
Yeah, exactly. You're like,
well, it's not even that this looks fun. It's that he shoots Ray in a way where you're like, he's a nice guy, or I could see where I could be his friend. Whereas like in this movie, I could never imagine myself wanting to be Matt Damon's friend. I could never want to be Jack Nicholson's friend. Like, these are objectively bad people, and Scorsese paints them as objectively bad people.
Yeah, the only sympathetic character, like completely sympathetic character, is Leo, I think. Even though he has his own shades of darkness, you know.
Yeah.
And
I would add Vera Farmiga too, but yes.
Yeah, though that's my biggest hang up, is that she's literally a plot device for the two men. And but yeah, you're right. You can root for her, even though she does cheat on her boyfriend for not really any particular reason.
And she's a terrible therapist.
Yes. What I'm trying to build to is that I love the gray.
But you're the model of drug-seeking behavior, Shane.
I love the gray. I love the layers. I love all the different the different ways that you can analyze this. So yeah, there's a lot.
It's interesting to, well, Heath, you go. So what were some of the things that stand out to you most about this film that you love?
Yeah, so first I wanted to address something that you alluded to earlier, which is some people will point to this as the Scorsese film that finally won and think it was a legacy award, or like, oh, we're just finally throwing him a bone. And while there definitely have been instances of that in Oscars history, no one is naive to that. Like Al Pacino is one of the greatest
Wow.
examples. But I genuinely feel this is one of Scorsese's best films. And while he may have had better films than this that may have also deserved to win, in this year, 2006, this was, at least in my opinion, the best film. It deserved to win. And I think this still stands as one of his best pictures. So I don't see this as a legacy award and like, oh, Scorsese's earned it, let's just finally give it to him. I see this as he legit earned it. And it just happens to also cap off a brilliant legacy.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, what I will say is that I have always found this film to be very interesting because on its surface, it seems so simple. This is a film about the mob and people wanting to run drugs or microprocesses, and that's what it is, and corruption within the police force. But really, there's so much more than that. If you take the time to examine the themes throughout this film, there's a lot to do with familial, in particular paternal relationships, what we perceive to be a father figure. That could be with Jack Nicholson's character towards Matt Damon, or even Martin Sheen's character towards Leo, and how different types of male figures, older male figures in your life can have different influences and impacts on your actions as you grow and you evolve. I also found that this film has a very interesting sub-theme regarding moving on to the next generation, not just the relationship that we have with our parents, in particular fathers in this film, but what we try to set up for our heirs and trying to establish an heir. It's actually mentioned several times in this movie that Jack Nicholson's character wants a son or wants an heir, and he could never get one. Even when Matt Damon kills him at the end, he's like, "Is that what this is all about? All this fucking and no sons?" You know. There's even a scene earlier in the film with his muse, where if you're looking closely, she's reading a book that's titled "How to Get Pregnant."
Yeah.
Like, there's just this constant theme of what it means to set an example, what it means to set an example for the next generation, how our actions recourse one generation to the next, and that it's all cyclical and you can't escape it. And we have to be better. We have to improve upon our actions to actually get any kind of growth through anything. And there's, for a film that's about gangster mob people running drugs and microprocesses, you would not instinctually think you would have this level of depth, but it does. And that's something I really appreciate about the movie, is that it rewards multiple viewings, not just because the story's great and the performances are great, but like you literally can get something new out of this film every time you watch it.
And I appreciate that point, especially towards the end, because like, speaking of like my whole entire journey through Scorsese's films, it's so interesting taking such a deep dive into such a prolific director and really seeing the themes and the threads throughout their whole entire career. And, you know, I feel like this film, I think one of the reasons why people might have that perspective about it is because it is one of his most crowd-pleasing kinds of films. Like, this is a fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
it's a breeze at 2.5 hours.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
And like the editing and everything, this is just like blowing by and how quick and snappy it is. But thinking about those themes, and like, I think that's because I think one of the interesting characters and how you look at that character is Vera Farmiga's character. Because like, yeah, there's a lot of like, especially to your point, Heath, because it's like, there's a baby. Whose baby's that?
True.
And
I don't even think it's a secret. I think as the audience, we're supposed to know that is Leo's kid.
Because Matt Damon couldn't get it up.
Yeah,
basically.
he was again going towards the theme of an heir and not being able to.
Mm-hmm.
The quote unquote good people in this film were the ones who were worthy of having children and moving along because their values and their morality was worth passing on. And the theme of no, the people that were the spawn of the underworld that should not reproduce can't reproduce because they are a stain on society and they are objectively hurting this world. Jack Nicholson was infertile. Matt Damon was infertile. It's all throughout that film. And yeah, I think it's not even close to a secret that that's supposed to be Leo's kid.
Well, and I think it's interesting because, like, I know, Robert, you just made like an off comment about like she just like cheated on her boyfriend. But what I was sitting there thinking about in this movie, specifically about that relationship, because like it's easy to just be like, well, this is just like the romantic subplot that's just thrown into this movie. Is I think what's so interesting is like Matt Damon's ridiculously charming. He jokes with her all the time. He's like the fun guy to go out with. He keeps playing around with her and stuff like that. But she's always at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
He never lets her in. And what she gets with Leo's character is like, he's just like an emotional pulse. It's just a rawness and a humanity that I feel like there's so many balances between the two of those characters throughout this film. And you see that in the differences that she sees in either of them. And like, obviously, like she should talk to her significant other about like, this isn't working. You just like the whole uncomfortable thing where she moves in and answers the phone and it's like the voice modulator. And then all he does is nothing but lies and to her the whole entire time. And like Leo's just so raw and just like out there because like this is one of those very vulnerable and insecure characters because it's just like there's so much that he has weighing on himself and he's just like feel like you could just snap emotionally at any second. And who could blame him? I would feel like he is basically the audience feeling this tension throughout this whole entire movie. And like every scene from even like the guy reaching for his cigarettes or something and just like like hitting him, it's like he was an informant. I'm just like, who's not an informant in this damn movie? Or like an undercover cop and stuff like that. But I feel like if like that relationship and those interactions, it's like the weak point in this movie. That says a lot about this movie in terms of like all the different kinds of things that it deals with. And I'll get back to this, but like Jack Nicholson's character in this is fascinatingly disturbing from start to finish. And I think you could even realize that from the start where he's just like meets teenage girl at beginning of movie and winds up marrying her. And you're just like, well.
And the first thing he says to her is wildly inappropriate, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Wildly inappropriate. But I guess what are some of the other things that stick out to both of you about this film in terms of, you know, what kind of sets this apart from like other gangster movies that you might see?
Well, can I get back a little bit to the Vera Farmiga, that whole little triangle? Okay. You were getting towards this, but one other thing is that it shows how Matt Damon, we're just going to call them by the actors' names the whole time, aren't we? Matt Damon was completely closed off, didn't want to open himself up at all. She tries to put up her diploma, her pictures when she was young. He's like, no, you don't see my stuff in the living room. That's for the other room. Yet flags. Yeah. But back at her other apartment, when Leo shows up, he like puts it in a more prominent position. It was low on the wall, but then he raises it up. Like he's there. He's not only being open to her, but he's like willing to let her feelings and her past and herself into him. So I think that's even more interesting too. One of the notes I wrote down in relation to your question that you just asked, Shane, was the last time I came on to talk about Scorsese was After Hours. Yeah. And that's like a Scorsese that doesn't really feel like a Scorsese, but this one is about as Scorsese as it gets.
Yes.
In terms of like people doing deeply immoral things, gangster drama, crime thriller, whatever. But to me, what really sets it apart again is just like the layers and the absolute depth. It's not just like these people do a lot of bad stuff and think they can get away with it, and then they end up in jail or then they end up dead. It's like, even though most of them do end up dead, it takes like Heath was saying about like the kids and who's worthy of what. It's about like who are we really? When are we undercover? When are we our actual selves? Is there like, is either of those things ever actually clear? Do those ideas ever actually exist, or are we always undercover? You said it as a joke about like everyone's undercover, everyone's an informant, but I think like that's kind of the point. It's just like,
Yeah.
no one's letting on who the real them is, who the real you is. You know, it says a lot about identity, and I really think a lot of that works super well.
It even starts making you question, like, are we made to believe the one member of Jack Nicholson's crew is actually an undercover cop when they find him, when he's supposed to?
Oh, when he's supposed to be at 344.
In the marsh.
344. Oh yeah.
Because like I know in the news it's like that he was an undercover cop, and like they made like, because like, you know, when he's laying there dying, he's just like, why didn't I say anything to Leo? And it's just like, I feel like there's enough almost ambiguity to have you like kind of questioning certain things in the film. But like, I think that's one of the things that I really like about this film, is just like there's things to question throughout the film. And this isn't just, you know, your run-of-the-mill kind of like, because obviously it's like, I feel like Scorsese and like Coppola have elevated gangster movies beyond like, you know, and all like early 20th century like originals like Scarface and stuff like that.
Right.
And I feel like it's easy to just be like, well, it just feels like another Scorsese gangster movie. Like, I don't feel like this exactly feels like Goodfellas or Casino.
No, not at all.
And I think it's interesting because you do have a better moral anchor in this movie than either of them, because like, I have no sympathy for Ray Liotta's character. I don't really like Henry Hill in Goodfellas. And I think Robert De Niro is very charming and entertaining in Casino, but it's like, you're not really supposed to like him a whole lot either. It's just like, you care about Leo in this movie. You really feel bad for Leo, that he's like, this is the only way they're going to let him in the police. And to be able to do something is do this. And
well, it's also because it's inherent. It's also because it's inherently relatable. Obviously, not all of us are undercover cops who have been placed for years in the mob. But what is relatable is the plight of the person, the individual who has quote unquote done all the right things, and they still get the shit end of the stick. And that's essentially Leo's story. He genuinely went in to be a Boston police, to be a statey, and they told him no, and they said the only way you're getting in is if you're doing this for us because of your background and the family you come from. And it really was like a nature versus nurture, and that's another theme that he plays with throughout this film. You know, the idea of what you're willing to make of yourself versus where you come from. And Matt Damon and Leo obviously play the reverse, the yin and yang of that role, where Damon comes from a good family, but he still actively decides to go down the wrong path, and Leo's the flip of that. And yeah, so you empathize with him. He is the character that he does all the right things. He put himself through hell to get to this spot, and he still has to go through miles and miles of trenches, and it still doesn't work out even when he did everything right. And I think that is what inherently makes this movie different than all the other Scorsese films, because I agree. Yes, is it Scorsese? Absolutely. You can feel his fingerprints all over it, but it will never feel like Casino. It will never feel like Goodfellas or The Irishman. And I think that comes from a sense of raw vulnerability and morality that those films don't have. And when I say they don't have, I mean they don't have directly in a character that has that sense of, like, you are able to capture and understand a sense of morality from watching Goodfellas by understanding it is not the morality of the characters that we are watching. Whereas The Departed directly displays a character who does have the active sense of morality that you're supposed to try to emulate in your daily life. And that is inherently empirically different than almost anything Scorsese's done before. Robert, what you were saying about kind of the are we undercover, who's undercover, and at what times, and I'm reminded I'm reminded of The Mask with Jim Carrey and Ben Stein, the Clear Eyes guy. If you remember, he plays a doctor, a psychiatrist for like a brief cameo in that film, and he goes on a little tirade with Jim Carrey where he says, "We all wear masks. It just matters when we take it off and who we show." And that's really what this movie is. Leonardo's wearing a mask the whole time, whether he's with his family, his cousin, who's an idiot, the mob. Even he's wearing a mask in front of Wahlberg just to act tougher around him. But he's willing to take off his mask and reveal that sense of vulnerability and true identity to Vera Farmiga. And that's why she can relate to him, even though she does have a boyfriend. She's like, no, there's at least this guy's being real with me, and she can sense that. Whereas Matt Damon is never real with her. He never takes off the mask. The only one he takes off the mask with is Jack Nicholson, because that's all he wants to do is impress Jack Nicholson. But even then, it's even a pseudo mask because he has an agenda with it. Whereas like when Leo's talking to Vera Farmiga, there is no agenda. He just wants to be. And that's constantly throughout the whole film. Where people are having moments of being themselves, being vulnerable, displaying through that vulnerability the right and wrong sense of morality and the path that you should go down in a nature versus nurture sense. And these are all things that I would say Scorsese doesn't really play with in those other movies. Those other mob movies, he plays very straight and narrow, and don't get me wrong, it's still incredibly entertaining, but this is why I say like Departed is not a legacy pick, because he's doing so much more here that he doesn't do with Goodfellas. He is pretty straightforward, giving us this is the mob lifestyle, and it's fun and it can be interesting, but like it's objectively bad because of what they do. But he still shows them having fun and living that lifestyle, and we have to discern from that no, that's bad. It's like Aaron Dicer likes to say, he can't stand some of those movies. He can't bring himself to watch them because he doesn't want a movie that makes an objectively bad person look like they're fun or like you should want to emulate that lifestyle. And this is his one mob movie where he does not do that, because directly because of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, we cannot fall in. You can still watch Jack Nicholson and be like, God, he's crazy, he's a weird dude, and you can be entertained by him, but at no point are you like, oh yeah, I want to be like Jack. Like, are you insane? That guy is nuts. Like, there's no way. So
I think this is a nice segue because, like, obviously we've talked a lot about Leo and Matt Damon in this movie. There's so many like famous actors in this movie. Who are some of your favorite supporting characters in The Departed?
I like Martin Sheen, Queenan, because I think he uses what he'll go on to use in Amazing Spider-Man, like that, like Heath was saying, the nurturing father figure type. He's the one character that I feel like reassured by. He's the one where I'm like, you know what? I feel somewhat safe around him, even though that turns out to not be the case for DiCaprio's character. But like, even when Wahlberg's there going off on him in the first scene with the two of them, he's like, you got to get used to some of what he does. He has his own specific way of doing things. He's the one who is fighting for the right thing and is doing it in like a compassionate way, because like you think Wahlberg is definitely fighting for the right thing too, but he's, like, I wouldn't want to hang out with him, whereas I like Queenan invites Leo into his home, gives him a cup of water, gives him dinner for the night. You know what I'm talking about? It's like he's just a very reassuring character. So in that sense, he's my favorite, but I'll let you guys talk about some of the others, but I like all the other ones for different reasons as well.
Specifically to all the way up until the end, he even showed the bravery that he had too, because like he stood there and he had no idea what they were going to do with him, and you could even see like the nervousness and like playing with his hair and like trying to psych himself up in that moment, waiting for that elevator to come up. And then this movie just full of shocking, just like what just happened, and like the look on Leonardo DiCaprio's face when just blah! And that was definitely one of those shocking moments in this film that just has so many of them. How about you, Heath?
For me, it's got to be Ray Winston. Winstone. I don't actually know how to pronounce it. My apologies. I think that Ray is a lot of the through line inadvertently for this movie from the mob's perspective. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Jack is the star. We know this. Obviously, Matt Damon as his pseudo son figure. We get it. But it's Ray's performance as Frenchie that sells Jack as such a threat, because we actively see Ray more in this movie than we see Jack. We see Ray, cutting the drugs. We see Ray committing most of the murders. We see that this is one of the most disturbing, dark people in this universe that this film has created. And we see that even this guy is scared of Jack and is loyal to Jack. Like, unyieldingly so. And so if this really messed up guy is still that loyal, then we really need to be scared of Jack. So it's really Ray's performance that sells the threat of Jack in a lot of ways. But also Ray's just great. And he's great in pretty much everything he's in. But I thought he was spectacular in this. He doesn't get enough credit.
That first scene in the bar, just like, I'm the kind of guy that tells you the kind of guys that you can't touch.
Yeah.
the way that he just like, what are you on your period?
Yeah.
When after the whole entire thing,
cranberry juice.
And like Ray Winstone was, because like I'm trying to think, the first thing that I saw him, I guess technically, was Beowulf, because he's Beowulf in that strange Robert Zemeckis motion capture animated movie.
That movie was so weird.
So weird. But like he's like, French is so great in this, and like I don't know why this reminds me a little bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when like Jack and him were talking about his wife, and it cuts to him and like actually killing his wife.
Yeah.
And it's just like, damn, this guy. It's like cold. She's like, and really is, because like he's the one doing a lot of the dirty work, except when Jack Nicholson like takes out a bloody severed hand and starts just playing with it, taking a ring off and just sitting there in his bathrobe with this bloody hand there, and just like, I wonder, like, Scorsese's like, I got Jack Nicholson for this movie. I'm just gonna let Jack do Jack, and you can tell he's just having so much fun with this movie, and he's so over the top and ridiculous, even if don't know how convincing his Boston accent is most of the movie. It's just Jack Nicholson just bleeding through most of the time. But like, you have so many interesting like actors like this. Do you consider this Mark Wahlberg's best performance?
I don't know how different this is than Mark Wahlberg in real life, though. Like, especially with the stories of him yelling slurs and beating people up. Like, I don't know how much he was acting, especially as a guy from Boston.
Yeah, Dignam's such a dick.
I will say that I don't know if it's his best, but it's easily the movie he comes off the best. And I think that's served not just because he is from Boston and it probably did feel a bit natural for him to slide into this role, but he's really served by having very little screen time. I think he is much, I know he would hate to hear this because he wants to be a leading man, and I'm sorry, Marky Mark, but you are much better as a supporting bit character actor. You just are. I thought you were quite great in this position. I mean, you got nominated for an Oscar for it. I think if you're considering his best, though, you probably have to throw this in with either like Boogie Nights or The Fighter. But I think you have an easy shot of saying, yeah, no, this is his best.
I enjoy his back and forth with Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Which I think they're both so natural in this movie. Just I feel like, did they just record the two of them interacting with each other and just like, you know what, this was just in the movie.
How's your mother?
Because this is a weird little thing, but like after, because like this isn't Alec Baldwin's first Scorsese film, because he was in The Aviator as Juan Tripp.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That was like the Pan Am guy, right?
yeah. And I'm just like, Juan Tripp. But here he's like playing a guy from Boston, and it just like feels so natural for him. And like even just like the small interactions he has with like Matt Damon at the driving range.
The driving range is his best scene. I love him. Like, don't get me wrong, I love him beating the crap out of the surveillance guy when the raid goes wrong. I love him and Mark shooting the shit with each other in the conference room when they just keep taking shots at one another jokingly. But his little rant that he goes on at the driving range about like, oh, you're getting married, good, let's women know your cock works. Like, it's brilliant.
Just like that cop thing, and like even like tiny roles of like Anthony Anderson's in this.
Yeah.
It was funny watching this, and I'm like, Jess, do you know who that is? And she's like, who? I'm like, that's Dre from Blackish. And she's like, just like, he got in really good shape. I'm like, he really did.
I didn't even realize, I've seen the movie again a bunch of times. I didn't even realize it was him. Like, I didn't put two and two together until today. I was like, holy crap, it's the same guy. He's lost so much weight. He looks good.
So like him, and then it's James Badgedale, right? Who's the other one along with Matt Damon, who's the other, like,
who's the other
dirty cop. Yeah. And like, I'm like, he was a supporting villain in Iron Man 3, and also has played like a whole bunch of tough guys and military people in smaller movies and stuff like that. And just like the little things, like watching The Aviator last week was ridiculous with all like the little roles, and even like somebody like Adam Scott was in The Aviator. And it's just so interesting, like all of these actors have been in a Scorsese movie, and like I would love to just ask some of them, it's like, was this one of like the highlights of your career? Like, I know you're not in this movie a whole lot, but like you worked with Martin Scorsese. And it's so interesting because there's just so many performers in this film. And even like, so one of Frank's guys, the one with the really thick accent, is from Braveheart. He's like the Irishman. He's like, I'm the king of my island. And that guy is in The Departed. And one of the things I find so interesting is because, like, you know, what do most people connect with, like, a lot of Scorsese films? Italian people. Because, like, what does Scorsese know very well? Italian Americans. I just love the fact that this is so thoroughly through, like, Irish gangster movie. And then it's just those damn Italians from Providence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sitting there like, is Providence like the South Philly of New England or something? It's just like having the Italian people just off in Providence, Rhode Island. And I think it was like a really interesting dynamic of like between this and Gangs in New York, because like obviously Gangs in New York is a lot about Irish people and gangs and stuff like that. Because he kind of had a kick in the early to mid 2000s of trying to do like that different kind of perspective. And I just think that this film is thoroughly entertaining. It has so many layers for you to dig into if you really want to spend the time and really think about it. Because like this is one of those movies that you could easily just watch as like an entertaining, fun time. And I'm sure a lot of people do. But obviously we've spent a lot more time thinking about this movie and able to like dig down and stuff like that. I guess, and as we're trying to like move along in this conversation, are there any particular things that stick out to either of you that you just don't like as much or don't like about the movie?
I'll do that in a second. One last actor I wanted to mention, and that's Mark Ralston, who is actually the other undercover cop in the mob organization. He was the one who said, you know, grabbed Leon's like, why didn't I say anything? And then he dies and they bury him in the mosh. he has again a small part in this. I thought he was fine, but he's probably more known. You will recognize him as Boggs from Shawshank Redemption. That's where I know him. He's also an
Oh
alien.
my gosh, I didn't even never would have put that together.
Yeah, he's Boggs, the guy who torments Andy in Shawshank Redemption. And I think he's great in this. And I love him in Aliens too. And that actually inadvertently leaves me to my problem with the film, and it's something that Robert alluded to. But if you notice, in all these actors we've named, they're all dudes. And as Robert mentioned, there's only one real. I mean, there's female bit characters, but there's only one female real character in this movie, and that is Vera Farmiga. And even Vera Farmiga in this movie has Dr. Madeline Madden, which is a weird name. But she's a plot device for 90% of her role. She's a plot device to eventually get Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio intertwined within each other so that they can find each other outside of the cop system. Like, that is her purpose. And also so that we can explore emotional character development plot points and character growth, or get backstory exposition out of her, but still about our main two male characters. And that bothers me. I'm sorry, it does. This, and I guess it's frustrating because we know from Scorsese's other mob movies that he can put women into these films, and he can write them to be a more integral part of the story other than a plot device for the guy. We see that in Goodfellas. You can even see that in not even technically a mob movie, but still kind of has mob-like culture in The Wolf of Wall Street. Like, he can do this, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't in this one. And it feels kind of gross and icky in hindsight. And I wish there was more depth to that. I wish even if you didn't want to add other characters and you just wanted Vera to really be the only female in the game, at least give her more agency. Like, at least make her stand up to Marky Mark before literally the very end, when she virtually has no other choice as a character because Leo is now dead and she's now heard this audio recording. Like, I feel like, given that she's a psychiatrist and should be more self-aware of her own emotions because she can clearly see them in others, and she displays through her own experiences when talking to Leo, when she is more vulnerable, that she is aware of her emotions. Like, the fact that she never stands up to Mark Wahlberg really until that incident, despite how badly he treats her, it bothers me. But maybe that's just like the feminist in me. I don't know. So that's something I have issue with.
This is definitely like a bro movie.
Yeah.
This is a sausage party. And like, because like, who's the other only female character that gets like a significant, or I don't even know if you would call it significant, but like has screen time, is Jack Nicholson's wife. Oh. And she's just like,
yeah.
I don't even know if it's his wife. I think it's just his mistress who doesn't even get a last name. She's just Gwen, and she's literally there to fuck Jack. That's it. That's her whole purpose.
And occasionally give him shit. Just like that one time she makes
I'm going to choir practice.
Yeah.
So that one makes a bit more sense to me because like, even though the men are the main character, it is showing something about him, about like how he thinks about women, how he disregards them. And I'm not going to repeat the line, but the way he says in the adult theater is like, I could do this so easily, that's just his outlook, and it shows that he's a piece of shit, basically.
Yeah, I think the characterization and the way that Gwen is structured in the movie works for the movie. I just don't think the way Vera is portrayed works for the movie.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Do either of you have any last minute thoughts that you want to share about The Departed?
How were there no Afflecks in this movie?
That's very interesting, because he said that to Heath earlier. Like, why is Ben Affleck not in this movie?
I looked it up what they were both doing at this time, and 2007 is when Gone Baby Gone came out. So I think they were busy doing other stuff in Boston at this time.
Was this still when Ben Affleck was with J-Lo?
Yeah, I was looking through his filmography. It was a rough patch for him.
But because when did Daredevil come out?
Daredevil came out in 2004, if I remember correctly. I can look it up though.
Yeah, because it's so weird to think The Departed came out like how many years ago at this point?
16
Daredevil
years
came
old.
Daredevil came out in 2003.
03. So this Departed came out in 2006. Makes me feel old. I'm just like, how's this movie closing in on being 20 years old at this point? And but then you look at the actors and it's like Leo looks so young and Matt Damon looks so young.
Yeah.
But like this is distinctly missing some Afflecks in this movie because I just feel like they just fit so perfectly in this movie. Like I feel like this is Matt Damon being the most Boston Matt Damon since like Good Will Hunting. And like, why isn't Ben Affleck here to enjoy this with you?
He could have played his cousin.
I was literally just gonna say, so like Kevin Corrigan as the idiot cousin is fine, but like if that was Ben Affleck, this movie's just perfect. This is like the best movie ever.
Oh, I still can't see him not as Uncle Eddie from Grounded for Life. I don't know if either of you have watched that sitcom, but like Kevin Corrigan is the uncle in that show. I'm just like, I can't see him not that. And then I remember watching The Departed for the first time being like, what? Just being like, wait a minute. And I felt the same way watching Goodfellas because he plays, is he his brother? He's some kind of relative to Henry in that movie. But I guess, Heath, do you have any other thoughts besides why are there no Afflecks in this movie?
No other thoughts really. I really do think it's incredible. It's something that is on its surface a mob movie, but it's really so much more than that. You can watch this one time, you can watch this 5 times, you can watch this 20 times, and you will still be entertained. You will still get something out of the experience, and you will probably still discover something new about it. And I think this will go down as one of Scorsese's best by the time he's all said and done with his career.
Which is never.
Yeah.
He's just going to keep going. And still trying to be like, I'm going to make a $200 million movie. Where's my money?
Yeah.
And just keep
it like a Facebook original at that point.
So my last thought here is, so we came up with the Departed drinking game. So you take a shot every time they say cop, and you take a whole drink every time they say microprocesses, and see if you survive. So good luck, and don't blame us if you tried actually doing that game, because I am not taking responsibility for that. But so those are our thoughts on The Departed. Those who keep tuning in every week to this, I'll be joined by my friend Jim to talk about Rolling Stones, Shine a Light next week. So the second concert film that I've done on here, because I love The Last Waltz so much, and that was such a great time talking about that. I've never actually watched this. I just got this in the mail today, so I'm looking forward to watching some Stones.
My guess would be that it's the most Rolling Stone songs in a Scorsese picture, even though that's tough to beat.
I would think that it would have to be, right? Just
my
have
guess.
to be. I wonder how many times they'll play Give Me Shelter in it. But there you go.
Guys, one more time, please.
Yeah. Just one more time. It's like, play it again. See a bunch of drunk people in the audience screaming, play it again. I saw Christina Aguilera's in this concert, and I'm 100% convinced she sings on Give Me Shelter. Because why not? They sang it with Fergie at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so why not? But anyway, so last segment on this show is recommendations. So Heath sounds like he had an interesting one. So Heath, what is your recommendation for people?
Yeah, so my recommendation is a board game that is very old. I am now at the point where I'm trying to teach my stepdaughter to play more board games, and she's 7, so we've graduated from like junior Clue to a little bit more advanced stuff, but we're still like nowhere near Settlers of Catan or things of that nature. So I busted out a game from when I was a kid in the 90s called Forbidden Bridge. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. You probably haven't, but if you saw a picture of it, if you're old enough, you might remember the commercials. And it's literally like an Indiana Jones style adventure board game where there's a board and you are a little dude on a canoe and you have to float down the river, and then the board literally elevates up and you have to climb a cliff, go across a bridge over the river, grab a jewel, put it in your backpack, go back over the bridge, down the cliff, and put the jewel in your canoe. And you have to do that twice and then sail away with your canoe. First person with 2 jewels wins. But the temple that the jewels are housed in is an ancient cursed temple, and every once in a while it activates. So the bridge literally rocks side to side at like massive 60-degree angles. So your adventurer will fall off the bridge and lose his jewel and fall into the river. And it's cute and it's fun. It's like an advanced mousetrap. And it's so fun for kids. And watching my daughter play it tonight, she was giggling and laughing her butt off. So if you have kids and can go find a board game, they don't make it anymore. If you find it, you'd probably want to try to see if you can find it at a pawn shop or online. I don't even know how cheap it is. People, for nostalgic reasons, might charge a lot for it. I hope they don't, but it's called Forbidden Bridge, and it's a lot of fun for kids and families.
What's funny thing is 2 thoughts popped in my head initially before he described them. Like, does that have anything to do with like Forbidden Island and stuff like that? Because
Nope.
I definitely have those. And
I have those
2,
too.
as you were describing them, like, this is the most convoluted like construct of a board game since Mousetrap. And then you said it, and then I'm just like,
Yep.
I feel validated.
Yes.
So, but
It's a more fun mousetrap.
sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if either of you have D&D before, but I feel like that's like next level once you've gone beyond just like make up all your own rules.
Yeah.
I was a DM for like a year, and it just completely imploded because my brother was a murder hobo and wanted to just like kill everybody, and nobody got along. So that's also the fun thing about trying to make those kinds of things work. But I'm definitely a fan of board games, so if I ever wander upon it, I could definitely see that you are, Heath, as you have some of them behind you. So,
Ta-da.
ta-da. How about you, Robert? What is your recommendation for people out there?
I rewatched What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, for the first time.
So good.
I'd only seen it once, like a few years ago, because I woke up early and couldn't fall back asleep, so I threw it on. Exactly. I have the same copy. Man, it's great. I think it's Taika's best. I love the humor. It's exactly my type of humor, just like that dry, obviously it's not British humor, but like that New Zealand style humor that is similar to British humor. I love that, like, he's able to make fun of himself. It's all very silly. Nothing's taken super seriously in the comedy, but on the emotional level, it is taken very seriously. And I think this, even better than Jojo Rabbit and even better than like Hunt for the Wilder People, I think this is where he mixes the comedy and the drama the best. There are so many great moments in that movie, so many great lines. Man, I just loved it.
We heard that they're going to be honoring my ex, the Beast. Oh, just like, oh my God, just from start to finish. It's like, you haven't cleaned the dishes in
5 years.
In 5 years, just like cuts and just bloody dishes everywhere, and I love the fact that they made the spinoff Wellington Paranormal with the 2 cops.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't watched that, side recommendation, obviously the show too, which doesn't does it have some of the original characters in it? Obviously it's not about like this group of vampires, but like, God, I love that show so much. And then Wellington Paranormal finally came out this past year on HBO. Well, I guess technically it was on the CW, but I watched on HBO Max. Just, I love that. And he has a new show. Forgot what
It's
the
like
name
pirate
of it.
something.
It's like that new Pirates thing with Rhys Darby in it.
Yeah.
And Taika Waititi's playing Blackbeard. And I'm just like, I'm so down for this because have either of you watched Flight of the Conchords?
I've watched some of their sketches. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
I've
my
seen a sketch or
God.
two on YouTube, but not like extensive watching.
It's like time for our band meeting. Britt present, Jermaine present, Murray present. All right, time to go. And it's just like, I love Rhys Darby. And one of my favorite quotes from What We Do in the Shadows is like, what are we? We're werewolves, not swearwolves. I enjoy that movie too. So I highly recommend it.
I love the scene. I'm a huge fan of like absurd humor or ridiculous humor, but especially when you tie it into slapstick, it tickles my funny bone. Like, I consider one of the ultimate funniest moments in the history of film is in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, the original, when Jim Carrey is trying to get committed to the asylum, and he is walking down a hallway, blows a whistle, yells halftime, gets a drink of water, and then just smashes his head full force into a bench. I die laughing. And there's a moment like that in What We Do in the Shadows where Taika is very carefully trying to get this woman comfortable on her couch and like laying out newspaper all over, and just he wants to be so delicate so he doesn't make a mess. And he bites into her like very softly, like gets behind her and bites into her neck and hits an artery, and just blood starts going everywhere. And just seeing him trying to catch the water out of the air, he looks like a dog out of hose, just like trying to get the blood before it hits the ground. It is one of the funniest moments in film, just this pure melding of absurdist humor with slapstick, and it's terrific. I love it. I laugh my
I
butt
knew
off.
exactly where you're going with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
When you said absurdist and slapstick, I was like, I know exactly the scene.
Yeah,
And then I couldn't contain myself.
Yeah, it's so funny.
So silly.
It really is. If you could picture a dog at a hose trying to drink water, that is Taika Waititi trying to drink blood out of the air, and it's just gold.
So great. Now, generally, I do a variety of recommendations at the end. I have not watched anything from my watch list. I've just been swamped with screeners. Robert knows. But I did watch. So I have one rewatch of one of my movies to recommend specifically because every Valentine's Day, my fiance and I pick each one romance film that we watch and do a double feature together. And mine this year was Brooklyn. And I will argue Brooklyn is the most charming film ever created. If you haven't seen Brooklyn, I absolutely love that movie to pieces. Saoirse Ronan is so fantastic. And I got emotional. I had giant grins on my face. I've seen this movie like 6-7 times at this point, but I'm just so smitten by her and Tony, and then her going back to Ireland. And, Donald Gleason's not that bad of a catch either. And you're just kind of like, it's a wonderful immigrant story, and it's a wonderful story about personal growth, but also has some really sweet romance in it. And God, every time Tony's little brother is the most genuine little Italian kid I've ever seen in a movie. That kid. The whole entire time he's talking like this, I'm just like, oh my God. And it seems like this would be so ridiculous, but it's so believable. Like, as an Italian American, I can attest. And so I love Brooklyn. Just pick Princess Bride because, Princess Bride does literally everything perfectly.
Yes.
But the new movie that I watched that I'm not embargoed to not talk about, watched Kimi last Friday. And Soderbergh's been on an interesting streak of HBO Max films. So, and every time
he makes one every month.
I feel like he's coming out with 2 a year for HBO
Yeah,
Max.
that's what I'm saying. Like he's churning these things out. It's pretty incredible.
And he's going for sleek, trim, thriller in this. Zoe Kravitz, I think, is great. And the whole entire time I'm thinking, like, what's he doing this time? Because, like, he has Unsane with the whole iPhone, and that movie with Streep in it where it was almost all unscripted. And
Let Them All Talk?
yep.
That was unscripted?
They had basic plot points, but all those conversations on
They
the boat
improvised all the dialogue.
was
Yeah.
improvised.
Man, I didn't know that. Maybe I'll have to rewatch that now.
Yeah, in hindsight, thinking about it, I'm like, holy shit.
Because I liked it as it was, but like, yeah, I might have to rewatch that now.
Yeah.
And then that crazy fisheye lens
Yeah.
they had with like no sun moon.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
this one, when things get intense, that camera goes wild in Kimi. But like, this is a 90-minute, just sleek, trim kind of thriller. And I had a great time with it. So if you haven't watched Kimi, it's on HBO Max. Between that and Fallout, they've had a couple of interesting films to come out so far this year. So along with all the other ridiculous amount of content that HBO pumps out.
Yeah.
And it's all kinds of stuff. You want some more Downton Abbey type stuff, you have Gilded Age on. Everybody's all about Euphoria. My Sunday night, though, Righteous Gemstones. Love that show. But anyway, and that is a wrap for this episode as we talked about The Departed. But Heath and Robert, I appreciate you both coming on. I had a lot of fun chatting with you guys. And if you watch this whole entire thing and you hadn't watched The Departed before,
what are you doing?
Exactly. Honestly, at this point, it's just like, go rewatch it like now. Like, stop this video. Well, the video is going to stop in any minute. Go watch The Departed again because it's great. But Heath, Robert, thank you so much for joining. And if you want to check out Heath on Letterboxd, and then Robert's thoughts, I love your videos, so I'm going to shamelessly plug them. So there you go. And he puts a lot of effort into his Letterboxd reviews, and I do enjoy hopping on there and actually reading them, especially since I don't put any effort in what I do on Letterboxd, because it's just like, here's a rating, because I have too much other shit to do in terms of other things. But
yeah, to be clear, if you want like a 1-sentence or 1-paragraph review, you're not going to want to follow me. On average, I think my reviews are 500 words, if not up to 2,000 words. So I hope you like that.
And not to say that the one sentence reviews aren't great too, because Robert occasionally just popping on and seeing what Robert says about it.
I use Letterboxd just to keep track for myself and to make silly little jokes.
Yep. Between you and Aaron, honestly.
Yeah. I have enough other places for full reviews.
Exactly.
So before we sign off, though, I do have one. I thought this would be fun. We're going to do a game because it sounds like we have all seen The Departed many times, and we love quoting it. Okay. I am on IMDb right now. I want you guys to guess what are the top 3 quotes without looking it up. What do you think are the top 3 most referenced quotes from The Departed? You don't have to get them in order. Just think of the quotes you hear the most. What do you think would be the top 3 from this film?
I feel like
when I read these, like, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay.
Is one of them I'm not a cop?
No.
I'm the guy who does his job.
They say the most in the movie.
Oh wait, Robert, what'd you say?
I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
That's number 3.
Okay.
This is unbelievable. Who put these fucking cameras in this place? Who the fuck are you? I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy. That's number 3. What's number 1 and 2?
Oh man.
Is the Marsh one of them?
No.
That should just be on there, just how Jack Nicholson says MASH.
I'll give you a hint. One of them is at the, or at least I'm pretty sure this was at the.
She's on her way out. We all are. Act accordingly.
No, that's a good one. One of them is at the golf driving range.
It's still working overtime.
No, at least I'm pretty sure that's what the scene is from. I might be forgetting now. It's I'm gonna go have
Mark Wahlberg.
No, but two of them are. I'm gonna go have a smoke right now. You want to smoke? You don't smoke, do you? Right? All right. What are you, one of those fitness freaks? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. That is the
I'm pretty sure that's what the golf thing.
And
And then
So what you're saying is all of these are Alec Baldwin and Mark Wahlberg, because
Yes.
that makes so much sense.
is the other
one
Wahlberg
about
the
like?
Shakespeare line?
no,
Is it about being? How's your mother? Tired from my father?
it's in that conversation. It's in that room. You're in the room.
Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
That is the number one quote, and I say that shit all the time, so it is totally true. Without asking too many questions, do you have anyone in Costello's party presently? Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself. Awesome, perfect. That was his Oscar nomination right there, gentlemen.
Could they even show any of his clips
Oh man.
on television?
I almost want to look it up to see if it's on YouTube. I don't remember what his clip was from the movie, but I don't know what they could show. He cusses in almost every single scene he's in, other than like when he shoots Matt Damon, but that's because he doesn't talk. And I don't think they're going to show him shooting Matt Damon in the Oscars.
I wouldn't put it past them. Like, I feel like there's some times where they put like clips from very end of movies. I'm just like, rude. Like, I know this is a great scene, but like, couldn't show some courtesy that people haven't seen this movie yet.
I hope they bring back clips this year. If they don't bring them back, I'm going to be real sad.
I was just going to say Bradley Cooper was on Stephen Colbert recently for Nightmare Alley, and the clip that he brought was literally the last scene of the movie when he's in that room talking at a desk. I'm not going to say anymore.
Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah.
Oh, why would you? That's the end.
Like, I know it's on Hulu and HBO Max right now, but like, come on.
That was from before it went to streaming. It was like, I can't believe this.
I mean, we're spoiling a movie that's almost 20 years old. That spoils a movie that's 2 months old, 3 months old. Why would
and nobody's seen it yet?
Exactly.
I know.
Robert and myself, apparently.
There's like 3 people that have seen it, and we're them.
It's the 3 of us.
This was the only money they made that weekend that Spider-Man came out.
That's why they had to put it on 2 streaming services as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the Kingsman just is coming out the 18th on Hulu.
Tomorrow.
So Disney's like, okay, Fox movies.
No exaggeration. When I saw Nightmare Alley in theaters, it was me and one other couple, and they walked out. They didn't finish the movie. So,
what were they expecting?
I don't know, but I was like, if you saw these trailers, you should have.
Have you never seen a Guillermo del Toro
Guillermo
movie?
Del Toro, yeah.
Oh, I know. They walked out because there's no creatures or anything in it. They're like, this isn't weird enough.
Not enough kaiju.
Guillermo del Toro movie. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So obviously. But
where's Hellboy?
Ron Perlman's like, I'm too effing old, but I'll do this for the fans.
Yeah.
More or less.
I can't believe you said that quote. That was so funny.
I obviously paraphrase, but more or less that's exactly what he said. Mm-hmm. But Heath, Robert, thank you both for coming on. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.